Bro, pause. Yeah, I'm talking to you. No, this isn't coincidence. No, this didn't just show up in your feed by accident. Something is shifting, and deep down you already feel it, but you've been ignoring it. Déjame hablarte claro. You felt tired lately, right? Not tired like I need sleep. Tired like your soul been carrying too much weight for too long, and nobody sees it. Nadie entiende, but heaven noticed. You think your life been slow? Blocked? Like doors keep closing? Nah, it wasn't rejection. It was preparation in silence. Porque no cualquiera puede cargar lo que viene para ti. Let me be real with you. If this wasn't meant for you, you wouldn't still be here watching this. You would have scrolled. You would have laughed. You would have left. Pero aquí sigues. That's not random. That's alignment. And I don't say that like a church speech. I say that like someone who knows what it feels like to be lost and suddenly feel a pull. Some things didn't work out because if they had worked, you would have been destroyed later. Some people left because if they stayed, they would have drained your destiny. Dios no te quitó cosas, te protegió. And you felt like it was loss. You cried. You questioned. You felt abandoned. Pero estaba siendo reposicionado. Because you were never meant to stay small. Nunca. That's why your life felt heavy. That's why your mind felt crowded. That's why your spirit felt restless. Parsed down to a pause phrase, fall embraced. And let me hit you with something real. Not everyone gets this message, but you didn't break. You survived. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Why me? Why now? Because your patience was seen. Because your silent pain was recorded. Because your late-night prayers weren't ignored. We ain't in church mode right now. We in war mode. You've been in a spiritual war and didn't even know it. Attacks in your thoughts, doubts in your chest, fear in your decisions. But here's the crazy part. They assumed you'd quit. They assumed you'd lose faith. They assumed you'd fold under pressure. You didn't. And that confused the darkness. Porque tu luz nunca se apagó. Your life wasn't being delayed. It was being calibrated. And now it's starting to activate. But I'm not going to lie to you. This part isn't comfortable. When your life starts shifting, distractions get louder. People get weird. Energy changes. Thoughts try to sabotage you. And that's where most people lose it. But you're still here. Which means you're built different. And listen carefully now, because I'm not repeating this. You were never unlucky. You were never forgotten. You were never ignored. You were being trained. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That's why you felt so out of place with normal people. That's why you never felt like you fit in. That's why your mind thinks deeper. You weren't made to blend in. Fuiste hecho para despertar. Now listen. This is just phase 1. This wasn't even the deep part yet. You think this was strong? This was just the setup. Because in the next part, I'm telling you why certain people were removed. Why some doors slammed shut. Why your life started collapsing before the rise. But before you go anywhere, and I'm not saying this like a YouTuber, I'm saying this like someone who respects momentum. Don't break the connection for the algorithm, for yourself, because if you felt something in your chest while listening to this, great, that's your spirit responding. And you don't ignore that. And don't ignore that. And don't ignore that. Okay, escucha. I'm gonna say something you probably don't want to hear, but you need it. They were never your forever. Yeah. I'm talking about them. That person that left sin explicación. The one that switched up. The one that ghosted. The one you still think about sometimes at 2 a.m. You keep asking, God, why did they leave? Why did you let that happen? But you're asking the wrong question. La pregunta no es por qué se fueron. The real question is, why was I still trying to hold what heaven was already removing? Let that sink in. They didn't walk away because you were unworthy. They walked away because they couldn't walk where you're going. Period. Some people didn't just exit your life. They were escorted out spiritually. Yeah, it hurt. Yeah, you cried. You felt like you weren't enough. Pero, escucha, bien. They weren't capacity for what's coming. Dios cosas que tú no viste. Fake smiles, hidden jealousy. Prayers that sounded nice but hearts that weren't clean. You only saw the good moments. Heaven saw the full movie. You saw support. God saw low-key sabotage. And you kept begging, please God, fix this, make it work, don't let them go. And heaven was like, no, I love you too much to let you stay there. Read that again in your mind. God loved you too much to let you stay there. That breakup, that friendship ending, that sudden distance, that blocking, that cold energy, ese cambio raro. It felt like rejection, but really, it was redirection. Tú querías compañía. Dios quería protección. You thought you lost a person. Heaven knew you were losing a distraction. And I know you still replay conversations in your head. I should have done this. Maybe if I said that. Maybe I wasn't enough. Stop. You weren't the problem. You were the upgrade. And not everyone has the maturity to celebrate an upgrade. Some people liked you weak. Some liked you confused. Some liked you doubtful. Because as long as you stayed broken, they felt powerful. Pero cuando Dios empezó a levantarte por dentro, when your spirit started waking up, when your standards started rising, when you started setting boundaries, they didn't clap, they got uncomfortable. That's why they got distant when you started healing. That's why they got weird when you started growing. That's why they didn't clap when you finally chose yourself. Because your growth exposed their intentions. Y Dios dijo, enough. So yeah, they left, or you were forced to leave. But either way, heaven signed that exit. You didn't lose your person. You lost access to someone who was blocking the door. Listen, you were praying for peace while sleeping next to chaos. You were asking for clarity while trusting confusion. You were asking for purpose while chilling with people who had none. That's not alignment. That's self-sabotage with a pretty face. Y ya no más. Not in this season. Not with where God is taking you. This next part of your life requires different people, different connections, different energy. The ones coming won't be intimidated by your calling. They won't compete with you. They won't keep score. They'll pray with you, not prey on you. ¿Entiendes la diferencia? They'll clap when you win. They'll check you when you're wrong. They'll push you toward God, not away from Him. And here's the crazy part. You had to be alone for a while, so you could see clearly who you are without noise. Porque si Dios te hubiera mandado a la gente correcta antes, you would have treated them like the ones who hurt you. You would have doubted real love. You would have sabotaged real friendship. You would have destroyed a real blessing trying to protect your old wounds. So what did heaven do? Isolation. Silencio. Tiempo contigo mismo y con Dios. It felt like abandonment, but it was surgery. Heaven was cutting out what you thought you needed. You didn't just lose people. You lost illusions. And now, mira bien. There's space. Space in your heart. Space in your schedule. Space in your mind. And God doesn't leave space empty. Él llena. new opportunities, new connections, new ideas, new levels of you. But you gotta stop romanticizing what God rescued you from. Stop stalking their page. Stop checking if they watched your story. Stop waiting for the "I'm sorry" that might never come. Their apology is not your healing. God's presence is. And if you're honest, deep down, you knew that situation wasn't safe for your soul. You knew, but you stayed. Por costumbre, por miedo, por no estar solo. And heaven said, if they won't walk away, I'll pull the floor from under it. That's why it ended so abruptly. That's why it looked messy. That's why it felt unfair. But look at you now. Still breathing. Still alive. Creciste. You're softer in spirit, but stronger in standards. Más humilde, pero menos disponible para lo tóxico. That's called growth. Now hear me. Your story doesn't end with who left. It begins with who you're becoming. The wrong one's leaving was step one. The right one, and the right people, recognizing you, is step two. But there's something in between those two steps. You. The healed you. The focused you. The aligned you. Because if the blessing comes and you're still moving like the broken version of yourself, vas a repetir la misma historia con diferentes nombres. We're not doing that again. So this is what this next phase is about, letting God rebuild your identity, letting Him show you your worth, letting Him teach you what love actually looks like. Not obsession, not chasing, not begging, not trauma bonding. Real love, real peace, real stability. So no, you're not too much. You're just too called to shrink. And this right here, this was only the second part. In part 3, we go deeper into what's coming next. Not just who left, but what's being built in you. Purpose, provision, paths, and a new rhythm with God that doesn't depend on hype, but on truth. Let's be real. You don't just wake up chosen and suddenly be ready for what's coming. Nah. What God is building in you, it's heavy, it's specific, and it's not meant for weak character. That's why you've been in training without realizing it. You thought you were stuck. En realidad estabas en preparación. You thought life was unfair, pero Dios te estaba formando. And I'm gonna say something that might hit your ego a little. You're not ready yet, but you're close. And that's powerful, because being almost ready is dangerous if you get arrogant. You start thinking you deserve things you're not equipped to handle. So God slows you down, not to punish you, but to protect the future version of you. Let's talk about what's actually coming. Not fantasy, not fake promises, not money falling from the sky type stuff. I'm talking access, influence, responsibility. The kind of success that changes your last name's weight. And let me break the illusion for you. This next level isn't soft. It's not easy. It's not aesthetic. It's lonely sometimes. It's disciplined. It's boring compared to chaos. That's why most people never reach it. They want the blessing, not the burden. They want the outcome, not the obedience. Quieren el resultado, no el proceso. But you stayed when it got lonely. You stayed when no one clapped. You stayed when God was silent. That's why you're next. But not because you're special. Because you're prepared to become special. There's no excuse left. No hiding, no playing small. And deep inside, that terrifies you. Because growth is not comfortable. It exposes you. It demands consistency. It kills your old excuses. That's why your mind tries to talk you out of purpose. That's why you overthink. That's why you delay. That's why you say, tomorrow. But here's the truth you probably needed to hear. You don't need motivation. You need standards. You don't need hype. You need habits. You don't need a sign. You need discipline. Dios no bendice el potencial. Él bendice la obediencia. And obedience isn't pretty. It's quiet. It's boring. It's repeated. That's why your future looks scary. Because your old self can't survive there. And that's the point. You're being invited into a version of life that your current comfort can't enter. Now listen carefully. What's coming isn't just money, relationships, opportunities. It's identity. You're not going to recognize yourself in a year. Your mindset shifts. Your standards rise. Your tolerance disappears. You won't beg for attention. You won't explain your worth. You won't try to be accepted. Centered. Focused. That kind of person attracts opportunities without chasing. But here's the warning I promised. This season can be lost if you go back to old habits. Old thinking, old people, old energy, old cycles. Because God doesn't drag people into purpose. He invites them. And if you hesitate, someone else steps into the role that was meant for you. That's not pressure, that's reality. You're not entitled to destiny. You cooperate with it. Now look at where you are right now. You've survived stuff that would have broken most people. You made it through mental battles, emotional droughts, spiritual confusion. You're not weak. You're unfinished. And there's a big difference. But here's the rawest part. You don't need another emotional speech. You need execution. You don't need another one day. You need a day one. You don't need more content. You need more courage. And courage doesn't feel like confidence. It feels like fear with action anyway. So if you're still reading this, it's not because you're lucky. It's because you're responsible. Responsible for what you do next. Nobody can live your calling for you. Nobody can face your fears for you. Nobody can obey for you. Not your church. Not your friends. Not your family. Not even God, because He gave you free will. And that's the final test. Not miracles. Pray, not money. Not signs. Choice. You choose discipline or distraction. You choose growth or comfort. You choose destiny or excuses. Heaven already did its part. Your turn is next. And this isn't about hype. This isn't about religion. This is about identity. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one claps? Who are you when it's boring? When it's lonely? When it's silent? That's the version that gets blessed, not the one who only shows up when it feels good. So here's your reality check. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not forgotten. You're early in becoming dangerous. Dangerous to fear. Dangerous to doubt. Dangerous to the person you used to be. But that only happens if you stop playing with your potential. If you keep consuming and never creating, hoping and never acting, praying and never moving, nothing changes. God doesn't move lazy faith. He multiplies obedient action. And no, that's not church talk. That's life. So now the message isn't emotional. It's surgical. Wake up. Detach. Discipline yourself. Raise your standards. Move in silence. Build foundations, because what's coming can't be held by who you are right now. You must become stronger. Not louder. Not flashier. Stronger. And the crazy part? You're already on the path. You just need to stop flirting with your old life. This is the end of the message. No fluff. No fantasy. No hype. Only truth. Now the real question. Will you move, or will you scroll? Choice is yours.